The Israeli military says the 1 million residents in North Gaza should leave within 24 hours as it heralds a ground operation in the coming days. The number of casualties and refugees are snowballing in that area, triggered by an Israeli retaliation against the Hamas attack. We take a closer look at the nuclear-powered USS Ronald Reagan that has docked in South Korea. What's it like and the purpose of the visit against which North Korea fires back. The latest Green Book remains optimistic about betterment in a slowing economy, though it says the recent conflict in the Middle East could widen uncertainties. It's October 13th, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We continue with our coverage of Gaza, where the Israeli military has ordered the population in the north of the enclave to move to the south within 24 hours. This as the ground operation is expected in the coming days. The number of casualties and refugees is already snowballing in that area after days of the Israel-Hamas war. Park Go-nu has the latest.
Buildings have been destroyed beyond all recognition in Gaza under a continuous bombardment from the Israel Defense Force in the 6 days since the Palestinian terrorist group Hamas launched a murderous attack on Israel. Now, the IDF has notified the United Nations that from midnight on Friday, 1.1 million people living in northern Gaza must relocate to the south of the Wadi Gaza Nature Reserve within the next 24 hours. According to AP, the IDF's order indicates an impending ground offensive in Gaza City, the enclave's largest city, within a few days, even though the Israeli military has not confirmed this. This warning also applies to UN staff and those sheltering in UN facilities there. A UN spokesperson in New York said, the organization considers it impossible for such a movement to take place without devastating humanitarian consequences. The spokesperson added, the UN strongly appeals for any such order, if confirmed, to be rescinded, avoiding what could transform what is already a tragedy into a calamitous situation. The ongoing Israel-Hamas war has already left over 10,000 people injured and up to 5,000 dead on both sides. Civilian deaths in Gaza especially have been rising, following the IDF completely cutting off Gaza and halting water, fuel, electricity, and food supplies. The IDF said it would maintain its siege until Hamas frees the 150 hostages it took during the attacks on Israeli settlements and towns. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said there are over 420,000 displaced people in the Gaza Strip who have lost their homes as of Thursday local time. This was an increase of more than 80,000 compared to the day before. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
In the meantime, the recent surprise attack by Hamas on Israel has raised questions of failure and accountability within the Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet. Choi Soo-hyung explains.
There is growing criticism of the Benjamin Netanyahu government in Israel for failing to prevent the surprise attack by Hamas on October 7th. The daily Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported on Thursday local time that Israeli Education Minister Yoav Kesh said that this incident happened under the current government and they will take responsibility for it. The minister also emphasized that no one can escape responsibility, including himself as a government member. This is the first time a cabinet member has publicly admitted the government's responsibility. Before this, cabinet members had generally avoided giving public statements about the Hamas attack. On the same day, the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, approved of the emergency united government, including a number of centrist opposition lawmakers, with a vote of 66 in favor and 4 against. However, the leader of the largest opposition party, former Prime Minister Yair Lapid, refused to participate, though he mentioned that he would support war efforts from outside the government, considering the country was in a wartime situation. Previously, Netanyahu's government had passed a law eliminating the Supreme Court's authority to overturn government decisions it considered irrational, reducing the judiciary's powers. Netanyahu argued this was to prevent judicial interference in politics, but the move faced intense opposition in Israel and from abroad. The centrist opposition National Unity Party also vigorously opposed the legislative changes, but its leader, Benny Gantz, emphasized the party's support for the war. Renowned Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari wrote in a column for the Washington Post that many military officers and experts had warned the government that Netanyahu's policies were putting Israel in danger by eroding its deterrence power. Choi Arirang News.
Shifting gears, for the second time this year, a U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier has docked in South Korea's southern port city of Busan, marking the 70th anniversary of the Seoul-Washington alliance. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji explains what this arrival means for the region.
In a show of force against North Korea, the USS Ronald Reagan and its battle group are currently in Busan for a 5-day visit. This is the first time in about 7 months that a U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier is in South Korea, since the USS Nimitz docked at Busan in late March. Before arriving on Thursday earlier this week, it took part in a trilateral maritime drill with South Korea and Japan in international waters southeast of Jeju Island. Seoul's defense ministry says the visit is part of Washington's commitment to enhancing regular visibility of U.S. strategic assets to the Korean peninsula in response to North Korea's advancing nuclear program. A spokesperson for the carrier strike group said that although the U.S. Navy aircraft carriers are deployed to South Korea frequently, the timing of this visit makes it more special.
This visit is special because it takes place near the 70th anniversary of the Mutual Defense Treaty between our countries.
He added they aim to build interoperability at sea towards shared goals and a free and open Indo-Pacific. While the carrier stays in Busan until next Monday, U.S. Navy sailors will be taking part in community relations events to build relationships between the two countries' naval forces and their people. Meanwhile, the arrival of the aircraft carrier enraged North Korea, which views the deployment of such a powerful U.S. military asset as a major security threat. Its state media on Friday threatened to stage the most powerful and rapid first strike, saying that its nuclear doctrine allows the regime to take necessary actions, such as preemptive use of nuclear arms, in case it believes a nuclear attack is imminent. The last time the USS Ronald Reagan came to South Korea in September last year, the North conducted ballistic missile tests to protest. So there is a possibility that the regime may engage in more provocations while the carrier is in Busan. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
North Korea is on pace to deploy nuclear-armed ICBMs that could challenge U.S. missile defenses. This observation was shared in a report by the U.S. Congressional Commission on Strategic Posture on Thursday local time. The report also warns of a potential 7th nuclear test by the regime and that its chemical and biological weapons programs continue to raise much concern. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is expected to remain committed to advancing the regime's nuclear arsenal as a centerpiece of his security structure. President Yoon Suk-yeol has called for South Korea and Japan to elevate their ties to an all-time high based on the will of the people in both countries. Yoon on Friday met with representatives from the Korea-Japan Association and the Japan-Korea Friendship Association, marking the 25th anniversary of a 1998 document declared by then-President Kim Dae-jung and then-Japanese Prime Minister Keizo Obuchi. The president said the two countries can go beyond previous high points in their relationship if they are able to build on exchanges and cooperation as they share mutual values and interests. Yoon noted air traffic and people-to-people exchanges between the two countries are recovering rapidly, as he also lauded various inter-provincial exchanges. South Korea's economic slowdown continues to ease thanks to signs of a rebound in exports and manufacturing. That's according to the nation's finance ministry. But uncertainties remain following the recent unrest in the Middle East. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young with the details.
South Korea's economic slowdown is easing, according to the finance minister's latest Green Book released on Friday. The minister's description of the economic slowdown has changed to gradually easing from the previous report's partially easing. This is mainly due to signs of a rebound in manufacturing production and exports. The manufacturing production index in August increased by 5.6% from the previous month, marking a rise for the first time in 3 months. Particularly noteworthy was the significant rebound of 13.4% in the chip industry. Exports in the third quarter decreased by 9.8% on-year, the lowest decline since the fourth quarter of last year when exports began to decline on a quarterly basis. The finance ministry also expressed optimism for the tourism sector, citing last month's on-year growth of over 800% in the number of Chinese tourists. However, the ministry has made it clear that this does not necessarily imply a complete economic recovery. It expressed greater caution regarding external factors and inflation compared to last month's report, citing uncertainties like rising volatility in global oil prices. Regarding inflation, it said the country has seen a gradual downtrend in prices, though consumer prices in September recorded their highest on-year increase in 5 months of 3.7%. The government evaluates that uncertainties remain due to the war in Ukraine and the outbreak of military conflict in the Middle East, as this could lead to more volatility in raw material prices.
As Israel and Palestine are not oil-producing nations and are geographically distant from the Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil trading route, it's expected that the impact on global oil prices, the financial markets, and the real economy will be limited. However, given the uncertainty regarding the potential escalation of the conflict, the South Korean government is remaining vigilant and considering all possibilities.
The government plans to control inflation by managing risks from both home and abroad in order to make sure people's livelihoods aren't heavily impacted. It also expressed its commitment to boosting domestic demand, investment, and exports while improving the economic structure. 신하영, Arirang News.
Findings for the month of September show employment here in Korea expanded remarkably on-year. But there have been fewer jobs in the manufacturing sector and for young adults. An Song-jin has numbers.
According to Statistics Korea on Friday, 28.7 million people were employed in South Korea in September. That figure is an increase of more than 300,000 compared to the same month the year before. It's the first time since June that the on-year increase rate has exceeded 300,000 after the figure dipped to the 200,000 range in July and August. The employment rate last month reached a record high for any September since records began being compiled in 1982. The rate was mainly driven by workers in their 30s who saw an on-year increase of 1.5 percentage points, and those aged 60 and above, with the figure for that group rising 0.9 percentage points from last year. However, youth employment has continued its decline for the 11th consecutive month, with an on-year decrease of 89,000 for the 15 to 29 age bracket. An official from Statistics Korea attributed this to high youth employment last year and decreased population in that demographic, emphasizing the need to focus on the employment rate rather than the number.
The number of people employed last September was high, and although that number decreased, it was due to the base effect. Also, a basic change in population structure should also be taken into consideration.
Looking at individual sectors, employment in the healthcare and social assistance sector, as well as accommodation and restaurant services, saw an increase, while manufacturing and wholesale and retail sectors saw a dip.
Not all manufacturing sectors are seeing a decline. Though digital products and metal processing are decreasing, the automotive and medical sectors are continuing to show an increasing trend in employment.
And unemployment figures dropped to the lowest for any September since 2009 to 660,000. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's Finance Minister Choo and U.S. Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen met in Morocco to discuss geopolitical uncertainties and bilateral economic cooperation. The two policymakers met on Thursday on the margins of the IMF and World Bank annual meetings. Although their exact agenda was not disclosed, it's said that the economic impact of the Israeli-Hamas conflict and the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act was discussed at length. Choo expressed gratitude to the U.S. government for allowing the supply of U.S. devices into Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix semiconductor factories in China. U.S. consumer prices accelerated slightly faster than expected in September, keeping inflation a centerpiece for policymakers there when it comes to setting its key rate. Lee Seung-jae has more.
According to the latest data released Thursday by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, U.S. consumer prices remained high in September due to rising gas and rent costs. The September Consumer Price Index rose 3.7% on-year, holding steady with August's on-year gains, but slightly higher than economists' expectations of a 3.6% rise. On-month, inflation was up 0.4%. Statistics also show that the Shelter Index, which is largely a measurement of rental leases, as well as the implicit rental value of owner-occupied properties, accounted for 70% of the monthly core increase and more than half of the overall monthly increase. If the rise in shelter prices is removed from the overall CPI, core CPI rose just 0.1% for the month and is up 2% on year, the lowest annual increase that the index has recorded since March 2021. Also, food price inflation is at its lowest rate since March 2021, matching the month's on-year rise of 3.7%. It also marks the first time since early 2022 that food prices did not outpace overall inflation. Meanwhile, U.S. stocks sank on Thursday, ending a 4-day streak due to the unexpectedly high inflation reading, which sparked concern about higher interest rates by the U.S. Fed before the end of the year. The Dow Jones Industrial Average shed 0.5%, with the tech-heavy Nasdaq also sinking 0.6% on the day. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
It's time for our weekly arts and culture segment. Joining us in the studio is our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin. Thank God it's Friday.
Happy Friday, Jung-min.
What do you have for us this week, Yoo-jin?
Well, Jung-min, you may recall that a couple of days ago, I went to an exhibition that used Lego blocks to recreate Korean cultural heritage, and I really had a good time there. And while I was there, I found out that using Lego blocks as a medium of artistic expression, which is often referred to as Lego art, has sort of become a trend in the artistic world. So for this week, I delved into the evolution of these blocks from a simple toy to, well, a form of art. It's often said that Lego blocks are a bridge to boundless creativity. With these small pieces of plastic and a touch of imagination, you can basically make anything you want. This limitless potential has allowed Lego to evolve into a recognized art form.
There are a couple of factors in Lego's transition from a toy to an art form. First, the brand never confined itself to toys. It collaborated with artists and released new editions, broadening its appeal to adults and artists. And then there's a growing trend of kidults, adults playing with and collecting toys like Lego, which were once seen as something just for kids.
Recent data shows the astounding growth of South Korea's kidult market, which includes Lego, toy figures, and video games, tripling from 500 billion Korean won in 2014 to 1.6 trillion won in 2021. As Lego gains popularity across a wider range of age groups, it's inspiring people to explore new creative horizons. Like artist So Jin-ho or Colin Jin. He's the first to recreate the traditional Korean ancestral ritual 종묘 제례악, a UNESCO cultural heritage, with Lego blocks. So's exhibition displays around 100 Korean cultural heritage and landmarks in Lego versions. These include traditional Korean games like pogorak from the Goryeo dynasty, folk dances, and a pop-up book of Gwanghwamun Gate in Seoul.
And I love kind of when tradition influences the music. And I think this is quite similar, that basically old Korean tradition are kind of playfully combined with a modern tool. And
What captures the visitor's attention more is that Seoul used straight-angled blocks to craft smooth, curved lines.
People often have this fixed idea that blocks must fit together perfectly. But if you let go of that thought, you can create curved lines like this.
There are usually instructions for Lego blocks. The fact that the artist came up with these shapes on his own, especially creating Korean traditional models and expressing curves, is truly remarkable.
This is an example of how unconventional materials and innovative ideas can redefine the concept of art.
I noticed a fusion of modern Western toys with traditional Eastern elements.
You're absolutely right, Jongmin. And to talk more about this Lego artist, Colin Jin, he was actually inspired by his wife's interest in Korean history, which led him to create his first piece related to Korean history and cultural heritage, which was his Lego version of the Korean traditional folk dance, Seungmu. So to talk a bit about more, his exploration of history books and resources while creating this piece really ignited a passion within him to create more. And what also really motivated him to create more pieces related to Korean culture and traditional cultural heritage was the fact that there's been actually only one Lego set related to Korea, which was the Lego version of the Sungnaemun Gate or the Namdaemun Gate, which was released in 2012, so 11 years ago. So Colin Jin really wanted to promote Korean traditional beauty to a wider audience through his work.
And for those who want to know more about this exhibition, tell us more.
Sure. So this exhibition is titled Colin Jin's Historical Lego, and it opened just this Wednesday, and it will run for 2 weeks, so until October 25th. Is taking place at the Boriham Exhibition Hall in Central Seoul. For those who are interested, it's open every day from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the second floor that was shown in my report, it displays pieces related to Korean traditional culture. But on the third floor, the artist gave a completely new contemporary twist, like Lego lamps, pencil sharpeners, and even USBs, that was all made by the artist himself without relying on any sort of instructions or manuals.
Well noted. Thank you, Yoo-jin.
Thank you.
It has been pleasantly mild over the past few days, but the stretch of fall weather will be on borrowed time as a low-pressure system will start to push in overnight. This will keep most parts of South Korea blustery and unsettled. On Sunday, quiet conditions will make a return with partly cloudy to overcast skies. As for the overall amount of rainfall, central regions, including the Seoul-metropolitan area, Gangwon-do and Chungcheong-do provinces will see 5 to 40. Surrounding regions, including Jeollabuk-do and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces, will see around 5 to 20 millimeters. In between tomorrow's daytime and evening hours, locally heavy downpours of 20 millimeters per hour are possible. Lightning and gusty winds are in the forecast from time to time. Showers will start from northern central regions tomorrow. As for the readings, Seoul will start off at 14 degrees Celsius. Highs in Seoul get up to 19 degrees, Daejeon and Gwangju 21. Busan will be topping out at 24 degrees. After the rain tomorrow, wide temperature gaps will prevail again. Make sure to dress in layers and be careful not to catch a cold. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arirang TV is conducting a quality and satisfaction evaluation to enhance the broadcast service for viewers worldwide. Please visit our website www.arirang.com to provide your honest opinions. Participants will be entered into a draw for a chance to win prizes. 2023 Overseas TV Viewer Survey. We look forward to hearing from you.
둘, 셋. 레이션! 안녕하세요, 오레오피입니다.
Loved and watched around the world. We want to make more animations to reach more children. Traveling time and space. Developing adventure and curiosity. Infinite creativity and hope. We want our children to grow up to be happy. Animation, watched by children all around the world. So that joy can be felt when our animation is watched. This is the reason we make animation and share with the world. K Animation, befriending children all over the world.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Hello everyone, it's Friday and you're watching Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. After a 10-day run, Busan International Film Festival has now come to an end. Though it had to raise the curtains amid a leadership absence and amid worries over a curtailed budget for next year, thanks to the support of movie programmers, people from the film industry, and the movie lovers who attended, the event was relatively a success. A wide variety of films, including acclaimed titles from recent festivals and star directors and actors, have brightened up the red carpet. What films were most noticeable and what would need to be done to make BEEF a renowned international film festival? For more on this, we have invited Darcy Paquette, a film critic and translator. Darcy, welcome.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Hi, good to see you. And we also have Jason Betrovace, a film critic and professor at Kyungdong University. Jason, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Bo-kyung.
Good to see you. Now, first question to our Darcy. After 10 days, the BEEF is finally coming to an end. It was quite a rocky journey toward this year's BEEF, with its leadership post having been vacant because of the internal feud. What happened exactly?
Yes, I think it's not uncommon for a big festival like this to have different types of internal feuds, but this year there was a particularly kind of strong conflict that broke into the open, into the public. And for that reason, many people in the film industry started to feel great concern over, whether the festival could be held within the allotted schedule, and it opened up a lot of discussion about the current leadership of the festival. And so ultimately, the festival chairman, Lee Young-kwan, who has been connected with the festival for close to 3 decades, agreed to take responsibility and to step down. And we will see after the festival sort of who ends up leading the festival into the future.
All right, I see. Now, Jason, what aggravated the situation was the government's decision to cut the budget earmarked for film festivals. And as far as I know, it was reduced by more than half. Is this correct?
Well, yeah, that's for next year. So that's something that I think will be of concern going into next year's edition and subsequent editions after that. I think for this year, in terms of budgetary constraints, the worry was sponsors. So some of the sponsors pulled out of the festival owing to the problems at the festival. So they had a reduced budget to work with. I mean, Busan does have a lot of sponsors. You'll see that, just walking around and going through the literature. It is the kind of so-called Cannes of Asia, and it attracts all sorts of sponsors, both here in Korea and from abroad. And so given the problems at the festival, I think some of them did pull out or gave less money, and as a result, they had less money this year than they had in the past.
Right, so the number of sponsors was reduced because of the internal feud and all the conflicts within the festival.
Yeah, that's right. So, having less of a budget obviously means that they had less money to play with, and as a result, the edition this year was somewhat slimmed down. There were fewer films, there were fewer screenings, which meant actually getting tickets really difficult. But I think that also illustrated actually how this year it was a successful edition, in that there were lots of people at the festival watching films and generating excitement. So yes, there were fewer screenings, which was a shame, and therefore it was quite challenging, having to get up so early to try and get a ticket and often not getting one and failing miserably. But it also, I mean, it made a statement in a sense that that there were people down in Busan watching films in what was I would say a successful edition.
All right, I see. Now, Darcy, even amid such difficulties that we have been talking about, BEEF managed to arrange a wide lineup of movies and, of course, star guests. So let's first tap into the appearance of renowned directors who were at the festival. I remember names like Ryusuke Hamaguchi and Hirokazu Koreeda and so on. Could you tell us more about these directors at the festival?
Yes, there was a lot of excitement at the festival because of the presence of these directors. And, you know, when these directors come to visit the festival, they present their films, but often they give an open talk, and there's kind of a separate ticketing process for many of those open talks. Those two were quite competitive. It was hard to get in. Luc Besson, the French director, who I think many listeners will be familiar with, was there to present his latest film, Dogman. Certainly Hamaguchi, the Japanese director who became so famous with his movie Drive My Car from a couple of years ago. He was back with his latest feature, and so that was a very hot ticket. Another thing that was quite interesting was a special section devoted to kind of Korean diasporic cinema. And so for that festival, they presented a number of films over the past few years. And they did have some directors and actors in attendance, and that included Lee Isaac Chung, the director of Minari, that caused such a sensation a couple of years ago. Justin Chun, who's a great filmmaker who's been involved in many films recently, and they did have actors like John Cho and Stephen Young. So there was a panel with the four of them where they discussed various issues about the experience of being a filmmaker who has connections to Korea but who grew up in other countries, and about their connection to their homeland and how they express that through their films. That panel certainly drew a lot of attention, and it was another thing that people were talking about at this year's festival.
Right, movie lovers must have been very much excited to actually see the directors and get to hear their insights as well. Right. Now, Jason, though their directors were unable to attend, acclaimed titles from recent film festivals, including Cannes, Anatomy of a Fall, were featured for festival goers. What were they?
Yeah, I tried to get a ticket and failed.
Really?
So I wasn't able to see that. Yeah, Anatomy of a Fall. So of course, that won the Palme d'Or in Cannes in May. There was also David Fincher's The Killer, which will be on the Netflix service as well later on this year. We also have Poor Things, starring Emma Stone, who's attracting a huge amounts of Oscar buzz. And so I tried to get a ticket for that. I wasn't able to see it, even though I was logging in at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I just wasn't able to get a ticket. So I was very disappointed not to see that, because I won't be able to watch that now probably until early next year. So that is an opportunity to watch films that do kind of, they play a big part in the festival circuit, and I was hoping to see a few, but alas, sadly not. Instead, what I did was watched a lot of the Korean films, which I was able to get tickets for, and there was quite a few to choose from there.
Right, great opportunity for some of the moviegoers, but not for Jason. All right. Well, Darcy, we cannot leave our star actors as well. I myself was very excited to see Chinese actors Pan Bingbing and Song Kang-ho as well. Who else was there?
Well, I think the big name was Chow Yun-fat.
Right.
Anyone who's a fan of Hong Kong cinema from the 1980s and 1990s, and of course his career has continued in Hollywood and internationally. I guess the iconic moment of the festival took place during the opening ceremony, and Korean actor Song Kang-ho was playing as the host of the festival and greeting guests as they arrived on the red carpet. And at the very end, Chow Yun-fat arrived, and I mean, you could feel just how much mutual respect they had for each other. Song Kang-ho looked like a child meeting his hero, and I mean, that emotion was shared by everybody in the audience. And so a special award was presented to Chow Yun-fat, the Asian Filmmaker of the Year, which is given to someone for their achievement throughout the course of their career. And so he spoke on stage, he seemed very moved by it. And then he did take part in some other events during the festival. So everybody, was hoping to catch a glimpse of Chow Yun-fat. But there were quite a few other stars as well. I managed to see Stephen Young and John Cho, and I mean, the opening ceremony was quite exciting. Fan Bingbing was there, looking very glamorous as usual. And I mean, that's one of the exciting things about this festival. I mean, both the famous stars, but also, when you watch a film and there's an actor who you've never seen before, but you see them up on the big screen, and then when the credits roll, then they come out to talk to the audience. And, as a viewer, that's just really exciting.
Well, who was your favorite?
I mean, Stephen Yun is one of my favorite actors, I think.
Mine as well.
And of course, he's doing so many things that are really interesting these days, and you know, Beef and everything else. So yeah, seeing him up close was exciting.
All right. Well, Jason, let's turn to movies. This year, there were a number of movies from OTT platforms such as Netflix's Ballerina and Disney Plus's Vigilante. What films from different platforms were visitors able to enjoy?
Okay, so it's not just films. There was Believer 2 as well, which well, it's bad actually. I watched that film. It's this is a sequel to the Lee Hae-young film that was released a few years ago, starring Yoo Jin-yeol and Jo Jung-un. And so the sequel's coming out on Netflix in a few weeks, and I was quite keen to see that, and that was frankly a big disappointment.
Really?
And yeah, I don't think that's going to go down particularly well. And so there was Ballerina, which also dropped on Netflix. Haven't actually got around to seeing that yet. There was also Yellow Door, which is another Netflix film. This is absolutely terrific, by the way. This is the film club that included, the members include Bong Joon-ho, for example, and it really contextualizes the period really well. As an academic teaching Korean cinema, this is going to be a film I screen to my students because the enthusiasm that you feel, not just from Bong Joon-ho, but from others in the group, just for cinema, I think it's infectious. So that comes out in a few weeks, and so that will be worth checking out. But it was not just films actually in the program. There were series as well. You mentioned Vigilante, which stars Nam Jun-hyuk. That's the Disney Plus show. That's quite good. I mean, I watched 3 episodes of that. There was also LTNS, Long Time No Sex. This is a TVing series, which comes out, I think, in a few months' time, featuring Isom. And apparently that is very good indeed. It was generating a lot of buzz at the festival, and I tried to get a ticket. Again, I failed.
again?
Yeah, I tried to watch a lot of... I watched 20 films, including some of the films I watched before the festival, so I watched a lot. But yeah, there's just so much to choose from. But I think it does just go to show, though, how the industry is changing. We've got series, we've got films, and Busan has always kind of tried to capture where the industry is and where it's heading and where it's come from. And so you have retrospectives and you have various kind of programs, and I think with the program curated in the way it has been, not just this year but also last year, we're getting to see more shows and films that are available or will be available on streaming platforms.
So was it Yellow Door?
Yeah, Yellow Door.
The most?
Yeah, this is the film that I mentioned earlier. This is
Yellow Door.
A movie that focuses on this film club that I mean, basically the members met together in the 1990s talking about movies, and in fact Bong Joon-ho's first film was screened there in animation, and so yeah, it's basically them kind of reminiscing over over those times that they were kind of meeting together and talking about films. And you'd have like these... I mean, Bong Joon-ho would talk about how he would basically watch The Godfather, and they would get this VHS, and VHS recorders were really quite popular during the 90s, and they had this new function where they could rewind using this dial. And so he was able to kind of go back to these scenes and kind of watch them in slow motion, and that got him really excited. So he would then draw the scenes, break them down, and yeah, it's a really good film, and I think it's an absolute must for any Korean cinema or Bong Joon-ho enthusiast like myself.
I will definitely watch it. All right, well, Dorothy, we can definitely see the industry changing toward having more films from OTT platforms. Also from the fact that Asia Content Awards has been renamed as Asia Content Awards and Global OTT Awards. Could you elaborate more on this, and what content was the most recognized?
Yes, I mean, this is an award ceremony that was launched a few years ago, just to recognize the fact that, so much is happening in terms of, OTT, and the festival wanted to kind of broaden its approach a bit. And this year it merged with the Global OTT Awards, which was also held in Korea. And so it's a new name for the event. Basically, it looks at OTT series, broadcast series from around the world. There is a strong Asia focus because it takes submissions, and so most of the submissions they get are from Asia. But people were paying quite close attention to this. There was, they announced the nominations a couple weeks before the event took place, and ultimately on the night, Moving was the not surprisingly, I think, given all the buzz that's surrounding this series. But this was named, it got the top award, like Best Creative is the name of the award for the top produced show, and as well as Best Actor for Yoon, and 2 other awards as well, Writing and I think Best New Actor. There were other awards also given out. Scoop, an Indian show produced by Netflix, was named the Best Asian TV Series. And yeah, I mean, it was a very kind of star-filled night. Lots of people were in attendance. This was yet another event that many people were trying to get into, but was really hard to get into.
Really?
You needed some kind of a special connection, I think, to get a ticket. But I mean, definitely, this is something that the festival has added in recent years that I think has become like a real kind of key aspect of the festival that I think we can see moving forward. There'll be more and more attention focused on this.
I love Moving so much, and no wonder why it swept all the awards. Well, Jason, it seems more and more OTT-produced films are sweeping the awards and also being featured in the festival. Some welcome this and some don't. What's your view on this?
Well, I mean, I think it's the reality of where we are right now. Streaming is leading the industry, whether we like it or not. It seems more pronounced in Korea because people aren't returning to theatres in the same way that they are in the US or North America and Europe. Films such as Oppenheimer and Barbie did so well. Here in Korea, Oppenheimer did okay, but it didn't perform to the kind of numbers that we've seen in the past when it comes to Christopher Nolan and his films. And so I think viewing habits in Korea have shifted. For me, during the summer, that was confirmation. I saw that it was just people aren't watching the kinds of films that they used to, and not in the numbers that they used to. And in Chuseok, again, we saw a number of films just completely tank at the box office, including Kim Ji-yoon's Cobweb. And when I first came to Korea, movies were just such a part. Going to the theatre was such a social thing for young people, for older people, for all ages. That seems to have changed during the pandemic, and streaming platforms have certainly played a part in drawing audiences out of theatres. Although I do think people go to the cinema now, and a lot of people are blaming ticket prices. I personally think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I think it's a combination of factors. I mean, talking to people down in Busan, actually, some were actually somewhat optimistic and seeing opportunities given the current market. And if you look at the films that have done well this year, so we have Sleep that broke even, we have Milsu or Smugglers that broke even. These are films that are not sequels. They're different, they're innovative. And Concrete Utopia didn't do as well as they'd like, but still it did perform. I think it did decent business during the summer, if not, not terrific business. And that film was different too. It's darker. So we're seeing the effect of streaming in that I think producers now are seeing films that didn't necessarily do well before that are performing better in the current marketplace. So I think there is room, for optimism, I think, or cause for optimism, rather. So, I think it's an interesting place where we are right now, but it is a reality that streaming is very much leading the industry.
All right, I see. Now, Darcy, overall, many reports say the size of the festival, the beef, has been scaled down with not many side events taking place. And data just released today said the 140,000 moviegoers were attending this year's beef, which is quite less than last year. But they also added that it is relatively a success given the difficulties it had to face. How would you evaluate this year's beef?
I mean, being on the ground, my feeling was that this year was quite a successful event, just because there was so much excitement. There were clearly a lot of people who were there at the festival, people who had come from all over Korea and were hoping to catch some films. It's always hard each year to kind of judge the festival's success in terms of the numbers, because attendance numbers do tend to go up and down, and I think that there are a lot of different factors at play there.
Right.
And so, for example, I mean, there were fewer films, which, to be honest, I mean, to me, I felt that this was a good size for the festival. There have been years when it has stretched up almost to 300 films, and obviously nobody can watch 300 films, but
that's true.
Even just, you know, I think 200 films is more than enough to pack the festival with really interesting works that people are excited to see. And another reason perhaps for the lower numbers is because of the way the scheduling and the screenings were kind of put together. So on the first day after the opening ceremony, you know, the opening ceremony is held on Wednesday night, and there's only one film that's shown that day. And then on Thursday, you know, everybody's anxious to start the festival, and you know, typically I try to book 4 films on Thursday, but this year there were only kind of 3 slots, and you know, things like that affect the ultimate numbers. But yeah, I mean, just seeing the excitement. I watched a lot of films, and I stayed for Q&A sessions afterwards, discussions with the directors and with other people who were involved in making the film. You know, every time there were just tons of questions from the audience. You could see in the faces of the guests who were visiting the festival that they were just so excited to, you know, have people so interested in their films and showing such interest and asking such kind of deep probing questions that, yeah, I mean, nobody was really saying that, you know, the festival was lacking energy this year in any way. So I would, you know, especially considering all of the challenges that the festival has faced, coming out of the pandemic, and then, you know, the controversies that took place earlier this year, and the fact that it was held this year with an interim festival director, and the planning started quite late. I'm kind of amazed that they pulled it off so smoothly.
All right, good to hear that it was a success.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, we are running out of time, but I'd like to ask you this last question. For more of this to come, what are some things that needs to be improved?
I guess just given the fact that I failed to get so many tickets, being able to get tickets a little bit more easily, perhaps in the, you know, I'm not sure how they'll do that. I mean, basically the system has changed, so you used to be able to get them in person, and my success rate would be much better then, whereas now it's all online, so everyone's kind of basically, you know, getting to their computer at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then there's this kind of war going on to try and obtain tickets. And so if that system can somehow be improved, but it's fair game, I suppose, right? So I guess maybe have few more screenings. I do like the size of the festival right now in terms of the number of films, but perhaps have a few more screenings. So audiences can maybe have a better chance of getting tickets. But I do agree with Darcy that, you know, I think this year was a very successful edition, and I hand it to the organisers for being able to put it off so well, given the circumstances. And it's great to be back in an environment where, you know, there's clearly a huge appetite for cinema. It just gives you that energy boost, that adrenaline. Because, you know, at the moment, as much as I like streaming, I like being in a cinema, I like being at a festival, and certainly at Busan it was a great experience. So kudos to the festival organisers for making it happen, despite the grave difficulties they faced.
All right. Well, Jason, I hope you get a ticket for the movie that you want for next year's meet.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right. All right. Well, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Darcy, for your time.
Yeah, great to be here.
Thank you. And thank you, Jason, for your time and insights as well. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, as always.
Thank you. All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be next Monday with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the weekend, and goodbye.
Korea. Some people call it the country